Ghosts have somehow moved into my day.
Walk with me. Chapter 7. Ose, the estate, Punjar. Ose sat on the floor of the bunker, the open box empty before him. A brilliantly colored collection of robes was arrayed around him. He lifted one that looked a bit worn, and his eyes lit up. His first robe. He had put it on when he had been ordained into the service, and he had worn the same colors for 13 of the 60 years he'd been a last. The robe was deep blue with a small border of yellow. Blue was a color assigned to scientists, and Ose's first role in the service had been studying the various light fields around a cluster of planets swiftly orbiting a white dwarf. His shadow skill, the robe's yellow border, was empathy. Lasts wore brilliantly colored robes that denoted their assignments and skills. The solid color of a robe showed a last's main role in the service, while the border revealed their shadow skill. Shadow skills were innate talents that involved sometimes darker abilities. Ose's skill at understanding people, combined with a keen mind for science, put him in the leadership position for a small team stationed on a moon orbiting one of the planets. At the time, he had willingly manipulated the emotions of each of his team members, secure in the knowledge that the end justified the means. Now he was not so sure. He lifted another robe, colored the vivid gold of the Temple Guard Corps with a border of orange, and tried to remember his time in the military branch of the service. Flashes came of endless hours guarding random spots in the temple, watching the political patterns of service life. Each robe was a role, a time in his life, a series of lessons, and another step in his inexorable climb to the top. There were many different colors representing all the roles he had lived, fully, with all his heart. Ose let his gaze wander over the bright garments scattered on the floor. All it meant now was failure. He had woken early that morning and dug deep into the back of the closet for his old robes. Ose had been saving them in case the service let him back in. If they ever did let him back in, what colors would he wear? What would he do? Tears came to his eyes. At least he could weep openly down here. He was old now. Too many cycles spent trying to balance the service with sigh, too much diplomacy and too little daring. What was the point of getting back into the service if it meant starting all over again at the bottom? A sense of calm stole into him and his body relaxed. He was done. He didn't have it in him to fight his way up the ranks of power in the service anymore. And without a high enough rank, there was no way he'd be able to protect the real first when they were found. He shook his head. The situation was impossible. Regardless of who was the first, they didn't deserve to be used by the service until they fulfilled the prophecy or died, which meant the service could never find the real first. He should spend what little energy he had left to protect the visitors and keep the first hidden. It was a bitter pill to swallow. Without the source, the service would lose its power. No one would pay for equipment that would not work, or hire the techs that fixed it, or the distributors that sold it. The first must be found, or the service would not last more than a few decades. I told you, the first is not someone that any of us wants to be. An imaginary Elenin, arms folded, was staring at him from the corner of the bunker. I didn't understand. Ose looked remorseful. You understand. You just didn't want to deal with what you actually were, a shadow of a man. You were pretending to be on some noble quest, but when it comes down to it, there's little difference between your actions and those of a sadist. He tried to muster a rejoinder, but she drifted into the wall and disappeared. Elenin was always the most brutal of his internal friends. A cycle ago, when the visitors had had their convention and picked their leaders, the real Elenin had understood the danger the service posed to whoever was the first. So had David and Fran, Maggie, and her husband Paolo. They had lied and supported Bussett as the first because giving the service the real first, one of their own family, one of their friends, was unthinkable. Whether the prophecy was correct or not, the experiments that the service was willing to perform on the first were real. Ose wished he had been wiser back then. He could have gained more of the visitors' trust, and perhaps he would be on Thrid at this very moment, advising the visitors and keeping their secrets. Ose slowly got to his feet and put his old robes back into the box. He would never wear the brightly colored robes of the service again. He would never wander the back halls of the temple or sit in his chair in the circle chambers. That moment each day when the tones had chimed through the temple and every last, every offered, paused and gave thanks, was gone to him forever. The decades spent maneuvering towards a better, higher role in the service were effectively wasted. The price of returning to that life would be to see one of the visitors that he knew and loved, one of the people that lived with him every day in his head, experimented on, and perhaps even killed. Ose heard a beep and glanced at his comm unit. It showed an incoming message from an unknown source. He hit a button and froze as Duck's face filled the screen. "Hello, my name is Duck. You're getting a message, I think. I'm leaving you a message." Ose felt the familiar mix of confusion and delight that rose in him whenever he dealt with Duck. Ose had met her back when he had been a last at the temple. Duck had been hiding in plain sight, pretending to be an offered, just one of the multitudes of servants that worked for the last. Ose had realized that something was amiss with Duck and put her to work in an effort to both protect her and find out what her story was. He had no idea that she was a visitor. Duck had been a strange but wonderful offered, providing endless chatter about anything and everything. Together with Ose's other offered, Mobe, Duck had learned a great deal. When Ose learned Duck was a visitor, he was both stunned that he had been so blind and proud that Duck had been able to fool him and Sai so well. Ose breathed in deeply and focused on Duck's message. "I am here in Dome 1, and I am inviting you and Lucid Sai if you want to come because I'm 7 now, and that is a big deal. Mama 2 doesn't know I'm inviting you. You can come, and I can run off to the station and meet you there, and then we can sneak down to the dome, and then I can show you how well I can dig." Ose stared at Duck's face on the screen and felt a mix of tenderness and dismay. Duck had been tortured at Burston in the prison lab, after being pulled from her own time. She had lost her family on Earth and had spent a year wandering the galaxy with her fellow visitors while hiding from the service. She had lived on her own in the temple for over a month and had been able to survive. His breath became labored and tears blurred his vision. In spite of everything that she had endured, the child was kind. She was still kind. He wondered where his own compassion had gone. Somewhere lost in the endless halls of the temple, back a cycle ago when the intricate and endless political machinations of the service had finally broken him. Ose knew that who he was now was nothing like who he had been. He had been twisted into someone he no longer recognized. If he truly cared for Duck, he would refuse her invitation. He would leave her and the rest of the visitors in peace and allow the service to fall into ruin. There was no way he could sneak onto Thrid without causing an enormous uproar and getting Duck into quite a bit of trouble. Ose let the rest of the message play. "I am going now. I have a comm so you can calm me." Duck beamed from his screen and then it went black. Ose's heart pounded. He loved the visitors, but his presence pulled them closer to danger. He wanted them safe, but he wanted the source renewed. His mouth compressed in self-derision. He was a coward, hiding here in his childhood bunker while outside the galaxy was grinding to a halt. He stood for a long moment, then played Duck's message again. Once it finished, he dialed a number. "Hello, please route me to Skylab Space Station. Yes, the one in orbit around Thrid. Thank you." As he waited for his call to go through, Ose put the box of robes into the closet and shut the door firmly. Skylab Space Station, Thrid. The 3 shuttle cleaning crews met early in the morning in the main dining hall of the space station. Everyone had breakfast together and got their assignments for the day. There were only 16 shuttles on the station, so the crews were busy, but not overwhelmed. As soon as the day's assignments were handed out, one member of the crew left quickly. He walked down the access tube to the lower deck, increasing his speed and occasionally darting into side corridors, and then peering back around to see if anyone was following him. When he was sure that no one was tailing him, he tucked himself into a small alcove and pulled out his comm unit. There was a message waiting on it. "Mobe, I need your assistance. I have received a message from Duck inviting me to Thrid for her 7th cycle ceremony. I will be there in 2 days. Please make arrangements to quietly transport me down to the surface. I will need to go unnoticed." Mobe felt a smile spread over his face, and his blue skin flushed green for a moment. He resisted the urge to let the tentacles wreathing his neck dance. It had been a while since he had smiled, but now his master needed him, and all was well. It had been months since he had heard from last Ose, though Mobe had not lost focus or slacked in his duty to pick up every bit of the visitor information in detritus whenever possible. Mobe had been gutted when his master, last Ose, had been dismissed from the service over half a cycle ago. He had spent a few days wandering aimlessly around the temple until he realized that no one really cared about what he did, or even noticed that he was there. Ose had left him no instructions, or even hinted that he was in trouble. Mobe tried to find out what happened, but got stonewalled by lass he thought were Ose's friends and supporters. Once Mobe realized there was no information to be found at the temple, he packed up his few possessions and headed to Punjar, where he thought his master was most likely to go. Mobe stood out on Punjar like a sore thumb. He was a grease, with blue skin, a large head, and an endlessly writhing array of tentacles wreathing his back and shoulders. He had spent weeks looking for Ose, but wound up living in a shelter, his skin flush gray, and occasional extra legs extruding from his torso in embarrassment. Mobe's endless queries about where he could find Ose finally reached his former master's ear. Ose had found him tucked into a corner of the highest room in the shelter. "Mobe, you need to go back to the temple," said Ose, sitting down on the floor next to his former offered. "Master Ose, I am pledged to serve you. Let me stay here with you on Punjar. I can help on your estate." Mobe pleaded. "Mobe, no, you cannot stay here. You vowed to honor and obey the service for life. I am no longer your master, and your future will shine only if you leave me in the past." Ose's face was stern. Mobe had searched his master's face frantically for some glimmer of hope, but there had been none. He had sunk to the ground, his skin turning ashen gray, his tentacles deflating. "Master Ose," he whispered. Ose's face blanched. "Mobe, listen to me. It's all right. Everything will be all right." Ose patted Mobe's bowed head and glanced around. "Listen, maybe you can help me out a bit. You know the visitors and their space station, Skylab?" Mobe raised his tear-stained face, a slight bloom of blue rising in his chin amidst the gray. "Yes, Master Ose." "Please don't call me Master anymore. Just Ose, please." Ose took a deep breath. "Would you go to Skylab and find work there? Something easy to do that will let you keep an eye on the visitors." Ose, I will do that. I will go to Skylab. What do you want me to look for?" Mobe's skin flushed blue when he rose with eagerness. "Anything related to the visitors. Just collect what you can and send it to me." Ose steadied Mobe as the boy's tentacles inflated with a popping sound. Mobe had nodded, too overcome to speak. He left the shelter that day, buoyed with his new assignment and determined to fulfill Ose's request. Now, finally, a cycle later, Mobe had a real task. Master Ose needed to get onto Thrid. Mobe knew it was his chance to truly help, and maybe even test out his theory. Mobe didn't think that Ambassador Bussett was the first. Not at all. Mobe knew, with everything inside him, that Duck was the first. She was different than the rest of the visitors. Some of the visitors moved through time, but Duck could move through realities. She didn't just phase through time, she phased through space. Time plus space meant alternate versions of reality. Duck had explained it to Mobe once. "It's like I moved into a different person in a different place, but I'm still Duck. I don't know what happens to the person in that body, but no one seems to notice it's me and not the other person. Different things happen in those realities, so different people are there. Sometimes people are missing. Sometimes there's no Mama too. Duck had fallen silent. Moby wondered what it would be like to have Duck's skill and know how different realities worked out. If he knew which reality had the best timeline for the most people, what would he be willing to do to make sure the right things happened? What if reality was already set and no one could change the outcome? A cycle ago, back at the temple, Moby had spent every day with Duck. He learned that her unique skill came with a price. Duck was able to phase at will, but she got lost in phase very easily and wound up in different realities along different places in time. She had shifted into another reality by mistake back when she was on her own at the temple. Against all odds, she had found her way back to the right reality, but Duck had told him she wasn't certain she could do that again. She had confided in him one day, telling him in that every other reality she was called a different name. Moby knew that Duck's constant introduction of herself was actually a plea for reassurance. Every time she said, "Hello, my name is Duck," she was asking, "Am I Duck to you?" Every reality other than the Duck reality had a different ending. Most of them were unpleasant. Duck said the best reality was when she was Duck. Moby felt his tentacles inflate with purpose. He had to get Last Ose to understand that Duck was the key to fulfilling the prophecy. He played Ose's message again and again. Last Ose needed him. Duck was turning 7. All his hard work and dedication were paying off. Ose's face rose in Moby's mind, stern but fair. The face of a true master. Chapter 8. Bussett, the Temple, Hutlam. Bussett crouched behind a bush in the rooftop garden. It was cold, and night had long since fallen. The tall lights that illuminated the surrounding area were muted, silvery beams that fell on tightly closed buds and folded leaves. She let herself sit down on the ground, wrapping her arms around her knees. Her options were limited. When she had escaped from her room, she didn't really have much of a plan, other than to get out of the temple. Easier said than done. She had been wandering around for hours, avoiding everyone as she tried to think of who could help. Seeking help from Buck or Eulish was out of the question. She'd spoken to Buck an hour earlier, and his advice was to turn herself in. Eulish wasn't going to go against Buck's orders. Bussett knew that any lass that saw her would recognize her immediately and hand her over to her keepers. That left the Offered, the servant class of the temple. Maybe she could find a gullible Offered. Bussett took a deep breath and held it, and listened carefully. There were no sounds around her. She got to her knees and peered through the leaves of the bush. The pathway was clear. Something wasn't quite right, though. The gardeners, they were usually Offered working in the garden, puttering around. No one was in sight. A sound tickled her ear. A high-pitched hum was coming from some distant machinery. It was growing louder. Bussett didn't wait to figure out what it was. She dropped down and crawled away from the sound, following the line of bushes until they ended at a wall with a door in it. She popped to her feet and sprinted forward. Reaching the door, she yanked it open and dashed in. She turned quickly, closed the door, and stood in darkness. The brief bit of light before she closed the door had shown a small room filled with gardening tools and a stairway leading downward. Bussett felt the floor in front of her with her foot, advancing slowly with her arms wide until she felt the edge of the top step. She fumbled blindly until she found the stair railing, and then started down the steps as quickly as she could. As she descended, the stairwell got even darker, and she cursed herself for not checking for a light switch. She stumbled when the next step downward turned out to be a landing. Bussett felt the walls and found a door, then a doorknob. She cracked the door open, squinting at the bright light on the other side. A quick glance showed an empty corridor. Bussett walked cautiously, aware of how vivid the red of her fake skin suit looked against the soft blue of the glowing temple walls. All the doors she found were locked, and she felt a burst of rage. How dare Buck tell her to turn herself in? He had said a month. It had been a cycle, and now here she was yanking at locked doors in a hallway, running for her life. Her hand stung as she tried another door. To her relief, it opened into a hallway. There was something on the floor to the right. She spared a quick glance to the left. The hallway was empty. She sprinted to the right, grabbing at the thing on the floor. It was soft and gray. She stopped and stared at it. It was an offered robe. She couldn't have asked for a more perfect find. Bussett put the robe on quickly and pulled the hood up. She tucked her hands into the sleeves and walked quickly, with her head down. Something bumped against her leg as she walked. A quick and painful check revealed a small tourist map of the temple in one pocket and a small number of coins in another. She could feel the newly formed scabs on her fingers tear as she opened the map. Scanning it frantically, she held back a frustrated sob. Nothing on the map looked familiar. She crept down the hall, ignoring the doors, until she came into an open area with a set of wide stairs leading down. Below was a large atrium with several open archways. Bussett checked the map with her now bleeding hands and finally spotted where she was. It would be a bit of a walk to the main hallway doors, but she had no choice. She heard voices and shoved down a jolt of panic, standing still. Footsteps clicked on the stone floor below her as people walked through the atrium, deep in conversation. She couldn't tell how many there were. Her muscles locked and she held her breath. The voices faded into the distance. Bussett looked back at the map and counted out which arch headed the right way. She gritted her teeth and started walking. Paolo, Dome 1, Thrid. Maggie, the mayor of the small visitor town on Thrid, folded her arms over her chest and glared at Paolo. Sunlight streamed through the windows behind her, spotlighting her husband in its glare. Magdalena, it's not my fault, protested Paolo. I did nothing to encourage her. She just decided on her own. What do you expect me to do? Paolo sat at the kitchen table in their little house, fork paused over a plate full of food. I expect you to refuse food from a woman who is clearly chasing you, replied Maggie. I don't care if she's another visitor. You're married. She's been flirting with you for weeks now. You should know better than to accept anything from her. Maggie sat down heavily at the table and took Paolo's fork from his hand. Is it at least good? She asked. Yeah, admitted Paolo. Roast cornell and some really tasty veggies. I'm sorry, Maggie. I didn't mean to take it. She was just there in front of me, pushing a plate into my hands, and next thing I knew, I was thanking her. Maggie frowned at him. Did you smile when you said thank you? Paolo looked sheepish. Honey, what are we supposed to do? David gets hit on too. I know, but you're both married. You're not free. Maggie pushed her chair back and picked up the plate of food. Paolo's eyes followed the plate in her hands. We need to fix this, said Maggie. Too many people are lonely and isolated here in the dome, and so few of us have actually found love within our own community. We need to brainstorm a way for our residents to connect with the rest of the universe. She tilted her head. I don't know. Maybe we should focus more on integrating ourselves with the rest of the galaxies. After we're gone, that's it for our species. Maybe Homo sapiens can live on, just modified a bit. Really? You're up for half alien relatives? He asked. Besides, connection can mean commitment. That means either visitors will leave Thrid to settle elsewhere, or we'll need to have other races live here. He kept his face expressionless as Maggie walked towards the corner where the trash can was. We've worked so hard on these domes. I would hope the visitors would choose to settle here, said Maggie. Paolo raised one eyebrow. I thought the point of having our own planet was that it's just for visitors, somewhere to live quietly and freely without people trying to profit from us, where we can keep the service and their blasted prophecy at bay. We already have the Gristle living here, very non-visitor Gristle. If we let them live here, then why not other races? Maggie stood by the trash can looking at the plate of food still in her hand. She picked up a bit of the roast cornell and ate it, then shrugged and pivoted to put the plate on the counter. Paolo tried to hide his smile. The Gristle were a business arrangement. We got a livable planet. They get to experiment with what it's like to live in one place. He casually got up and put the plate of food in the cooler. Listen, Eleanor and David got in this afternoon. Maybe we should run this by them. Eleanor might have strong feelings about letting outsiders live on Thrid. Bussett, the temple, Hutlam. Bussett peered around the corner into the main hall of the temple. It was a huge expanse, the evenly spaced columns shooting up to support the enormous dome. Archways led to myriad other sections of the temple complex, entryways to the wings that housed the service's different departments. Offered and lasts milled about, deep in conversation, while the main temple gourds were manned by temple guards in gold robes. The gold cloth, only worn by the lasts in the military, shone like a warning light, and Bussett pulled her head back. She could see no clear way out of the main entrance. No offered were leaving, and even the lasts were being watched closely as they exited. She sat down heavily on a bench within sight of the front doors and tried to push her foggy mind towards a solution. She was so close. A short figure in gold robes strode across her field of view. Bussett shrank within her robes, tucking her oozing hands under her arms. Kester was here. His voice echoed in the hall, and her hands twitched. She forced them into stillness. Kester would find her. He'd take one look at the lone offered sitting on a bench and investigate. She had to get up and join a search party. She took a deep breath, got to her feet, and then froze as a voice rang out through the hall. "The first! She's here! Over here!" A gray-robed offered stood, waving their arms just across from her on the other side of the hall. Bussett's hands shook. "I saw her! She ran down that corridor!" The offered pointed towards a distant archway, and then joined the stampedes of lasts and offereds running towards where they thought the first was. All but two of the guards at the front door ran to help capture the first. Bussett forced herself to walk calmly to the main door and stand just to the side of the entry. Shouts rang around the hallway, echoing off the stone walls. "I see her! It's not her! She's wearing a disguise! She's dressed as a lass! Fool, it's me! I got her! Help, you idiot, it's me! Where did that offered go? Wait, is that her there? All lass, help! Now!" The two lasts at the front door finally gave up their posts and ran to help. Bussett slipped out the door and walked quickly down the wide front steps of the temple. She stumbled a few times, but she made it to the open square, putting one foot in front of the other and trying to blend in with the crowd. Within a few minutes, she was in a side alley. She hesitated in front of an inset doorway, desperate to stop and rest, but pushed herself on. It was another 10 blocks before she found an unlocked shed behind a restaurant. She darted inside and saw piles of empty boxes and buckets. She crouched down in a corner, hiding behind cartons. Her hands were numb and she felt nauseous. She let herself sit all the way down and closed her eyes. Just being able to sit there, resting, was bliss. She tried to make herself get up and keep moving, but her body wouldn't respond. The muffled sounds of the busy city receded. Bussett fell asleep.